Imagine this. In an age of instant streaming, global internet, there are still these hidden highways of sound. Invisible waves carrying messages across whole continents.
Yeah, it's quite something.
From government news, religious sermons, even like political propaganda, these signals are out there. So who's listening? And maybe more surprisingly, who's still broadcasting on these, old school airwaves?
It's a truly fascinating thought, isn't it? They're not your typical digital channels, obviously, yet they're incredibly active.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into this remarkable, often overlooked world. External services and other cross-border broadcasts on Mediumwave.
Okay.
Our map for this journey is this incredibly detailed guide, compiled by Tony Rogers for the British DX Club, specifically for summer 2025.
Right.
And our mission really is to unpack this intricate global web of signals, uncover some surprising facts about how nations, organizations, even volunteers still use these airwaves and what that tells us about global communication today.
And for you, our listener, you're about to discover this really unique blend. What some might consider forgotten technology, but which is still a very vibrant form of international outreach.
Yeah.
It reveals how knowledge and influence, too, stubbornly flow beyond those digital borders.
Yeah.
Get ready for some genuine aha moments, I think, about the persistent power of radio.
Okay, let's unpack this then. First off, what exactly are external services and other cross-border broadcasts on Mediumwave? It sounds a bit, Cold War-ish.
Hey, well, in essence, these are international or cross-border radio transmissions using medium wave frequencies. Think of them as radio waves that can travel incredibly far.
Especially at night, right?
Exactly, especially after dark.
Yeah.
The atmospheric conditions are just right for long-distance propagation then. And the guide we're looking at, it maps this huge geographical spread: Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Caucasus, Asia, the Americas. So we're talking a truly global network, and one that's still going.
All right. And you mentioned a term earlier, DXer. Who is a DXer? And why is medium wave so appealing to them? Is it sort of like a treasure hunt for sound?
It absolutely is a treasure hunt, yeah. DXing is the hobby of receiving distant radio or sometimes television signals, like trying to catch a whisper from across the ocean, basically.
Yeah.
And medium wave is a strong point for DXers because, well, many international services still use incredibly high-power transmitters on these frequencies, which means there's a fantastic opportunity to hear and identify stations that are very, very far away.
And how do they identify them if the signal's weak?
Well, what's particularly helpful is that many stations use familiar interval signal tunes, those short musical snippets between programs,
Yeah, like station jingles almost.
Exactly, or standard introductions and closures. These act like sonic fingerprints, helping to identify a station even if the language isn't clear, the signal is fading in and out.
That's brilliant. So that this guide, the one by Tony Rogers, how does it stay so current? I mean, frequencies and stations must change all the time.
Yeah, that's a really good question about accuracy, and it's one of the guide's real strengths, actually. Tony Rogers, who compiles it, updates it incredibly regularly. The version we have is from June 17th, 2025.
Wow, very recent then.
Very. Its power lies in its ability to correct and update quickly. It relies heavily on input from the global DXer community for catching any errors or omissions.
So it's crowdsourced, in a way.
Sort of, yeah. And the station descriptions themselves, by the way, are often taken directly from the station's own websites or, Wikipedia. Plus, there are other related guides available for specific regions like Europe on medium wave or Africa on medium wave. It's really a living document.
All right, I'm ready to tune in. Let's embark on our deep dive. Where should we start? Maybe North Africa and the Mediterranean. First up, Radio Algeria International. What's their story?
Okay, Radio Algeria International. They launched back on March 19, 2007, and it runs 247. It's incredibly multilingual broadcasting in Arabic, French, English, and Spanish.
Quite a mix. What kind of stuff do they broadcast?
Their content primarily focuses on topical national and international news. The English segment, for instance, concludes a daily feature program, so it's quite substantial.
And they're really pushing out significant power, aren't they, to ensure reach, looking here, hundreds of kilowatts from multiple sites: Karina, Où il fait?
Absolutely. 600 kilowatts from some sites. Their primary target audience is North Africa and the Mediterranean basin.
Okay.
What's particularly insightful from their monitored schedule in early 2024 is how dynamic their broadcast day is. For instance, it kicks off around 0450 UTC with the Algerian national anthem and multilingual IDs.
Right.
Then you get detailed language shifts throughout the day. You'll hear Arabic and French early on, then specific English segments in the afternoon and evening, 1330 UTC, 1900 UTC, and Spanish at other times. It really highlights how active these services are.
So it's a very structured broadcast, but adaptable too. And I noticed a particular note in the source about how current events can influence their programming.
Indeed. Yeah, the guide mentions that Arabic opinions and discussions, specifically on the Gaza conflict, might sometimes replace the regular scheduled programming.
Interesting.
You might also hear promos for another station, Afriqiya FM, and Muslim prayers at times corresponding to Algiers. It really highlights how current affairs directly impact the content flowing through these airwaves. It's like a live pulse of national and regional concerns.
Moving just next door, geographically speaking, we have Radio Tunis Chain International from Tunisia. What about their presence on Mediumwave?
Radio Tunis operates on 963 kilohertz. They transmit at 100 kilowatts from Jneida.
Still pretty powerful.
Oh, yeah. And like Radio Algeria, they're quite multilingual, broadcasting in French, German, English, Italian, and Spanish, primarily targeting, again, North Africa and the Mediterranean. It's another example of a national broadcaster using Mediumwave for that broad regional outreach.
Okay, let's shift continents now. Head east to the East Asian airwaves. This is where it gets particularly fascinating, I think, geopolitically. We have China National Radio, CNR5, also known as Cross-Strait Radio.
Yes, and these aren't just isolated signals. What's striking here is the sheer density and power of these transmissions, often from both sides of the Taiwan Strait.
Right.
CNR5, it underwent a reorganization back in March 2021, even got new opening and closing music. Its slogan is quite direct: across the strait, one family on both sides.
Oh.
And it broadcasts on multiple high-power frequencies. Often with immense power, we're talking hundreds of kilowatts, sometimes well over a megawatt, specifically targeting Taiwan and southern China.
Over a megawatt, wow. And then there's CNR6, the voice of Shenzhou. Is that also aimed at Taiwan?
Yes, CNR6 is China National Radio's second service, specifically aimed at Taiwan. It broadcasts on several frequencies, also with considerable power, ranging from 100 kilowatts up to 1,200 kilowatts, so a megawatt plus again, potentially.
Incredible.
Carrying programs in Chinese and other languages spoken in Taiwan, it's clearly part of the same strategic effort to reach the region.
And the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, even operates its own service, Hachijisheng, or Voice of the Taiwan Strait. That sounds like straight-up propaganda.
Well, that's precisely its stated purpose, yeah. Broadcasting propaganda to Taiwan. You can find it on frequencies like 666 kilohertz and 783 kilohertz.
Okay.
The 783 kilohertz frequency specifically features what's called the Amoy service, which refers to the Xiamen dialect, often targeting that specific region in Taiwan with its messaging. It's a clear indication of a very direct, targeted campaign using Mediumwave. Only 50 kilowatts, though, interestingly.
So it's a real information war playing out on the airwaves. Taiwan must be pushing back too, right? Like with the Voice of Kwangwa.
Correct. Voice of Kwangwa is part of Taiwan's Voice of Han broadcasting network, and it broadcasts propaganda in Chinese directly to mainland China.
The other direction.
Exactly, on frequencies like 711 kilohertz and 981 kilohertz, transmitting with significant power, 250 kilowatts from Sinfeng. This really illustrates a persistent, high-stakes information battle where Mediumwave is clearly seen as a vital, direct channel for influence, even in our super-connected digital world.
And then there's Radio Taiwan International, which also relays KBS World Radio from Korea. What's surprising about their broadcasts?
This is truly unique, actually. While Radio Taiwan International, that's the Republic of China's international service, primarily focuses on Mandarin broadcast towards mainland China.
Right.
It also broadcasts in Vietnamese, Thai, and Indonesian.
Really? Why those languages?
Well, this isn't for international listeners at large. It's specifically aimed at foreign workers within Taiwan itself.
Oh, interesting use of the platform.
Exactly. And yes, it also relays KBS World Radio in Chinese. It shows as a dual purpose: international outreach and domestic communication with specific migrant populations, all using the same powerful platform. 1,557 kilohertz, 300 kilowatts.
That's a fascinating angle. Okay, let's shift gears now to the global reach of religious broadcasting. This section features some real heavy hitters, like Transworld Radio or TWR. They seem to be absolutely everywhere.
TWR is indeed a massive operation, strategically positioned across the globe. Take their Silk Road project in Kyrgyzstan, for instance, on 612 kilohertz.
Okay.
It launched in January 2017 with a new 200 kilowatt transmitter. And they broadcast a huge variety of specific programs in languages like Kazakh, Russian, Uzbek, Uyghur, and Kyrgyz, directly targeting communities right across Central Asia.
And they have a station way over in the Caribbean Netherlands, TWR Bonaire, on 800 kilohertz. What's the scope there?
TWR Bonaire operates at a maximum of 450 kilowatts, pretty hefty, and delivers a wide range of programs in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, including well-known titles like Amazing Grace and In Touch. They even have a specific program in Makushi reaching indigenous communities in the region. This really demonstrates their granular targeting, even within these broad regions.
Their reach is truly global. And TWR India, broadcasting from Sri Lanka on 882 kilohertz with 350 kilowatts.
Yeah.
The list of languages here is incredible. Seems to cover huge parts of India.
It really does. They offer programs in a truly staggering range of languages. I think the guide lists over 20, from major regional tongues like Hindi, Tamil, and Punjabi, to many, many indigenous dialects like Sora, Gandhi, Tulu, Kui, Konkani.
Wow.
It's a powerful testament to the granular targeting these broadcasters achieve across India's diverse linguistic landscape. Instead of trying to reach everyone with one message, they tailor content to very specific communities, knowing that language is absolutely key to connection.
Then there's TWR Europe and Kamina, that's Caucasus, Middle East, North Africa, broadcasting from Armenia and France. Armenia seems particularly powerful. 2 frequencies, 1350 and 1377 kilohertz, at a massive 1,000 kilowatts each.
Absolutely, a megawatt each. From Armenia, they broadcast Arabic programs like Dardasha 7 Arab Youth Radio and Hope for Syria, aimed directly at the Middle East. They also transmit in Turkmen, Kazakh, and Karkalpak, with some programs recently shifting to 1377 kilohertz. And the guide notes their beam has changed to specifically target Iran and Ukraine with programs in Persian and Ukrainian, like Hope for Ukraine.
So they can literally aim the signal.
To some extent, yes, beam antennas. And from France, on 1367 kilohertz, also at a staggering 1,000 kilowatts, they offer Kabyle programs for Northwest Africa and Arabic programs for North Africa. These aren't just broad broadcasts. They're often carefully aimed transmissions.
And TWR Pani from Kyrgyzstan and TWR West Africa from Benin, they sound just as expansive.
They are. TWR Pananai on 1467 kilohertz at 500 kilowatts covers Pakistan, Afghanistan, and northern India with languages like Urdu, Kashmiri, Dari, and Pashto.
Okay.
And TWR West Africa from Benin on 1476 kilohertz and 1566 kilohertz uses 2 transmitters, 200 kilowatts and 100 kilowatts, to cover a huge portion of West Africa and a truly vast number of languages. We're talking dozens here: Hausa, Igbo, English, French, Yoruba, Kanuri, Fulfulde, Twi, Dendi, Bambara, many more. It's an incredible effort to reach specific communities in their own languages.
So the scale of these religious broadcasters is just enormous. And Far East Broadcasting Company, FEBC Korea, HLKX in South Korea, is another major player in this space.
FEBC is another significant international Christian radio network, yes. HLKX on 1188 kilohertz and 1566 kilohertz broadcasts Korean programs. And via relay agreements or specific program blocks, they reach out with Radio Liangyu in Chinese, FEC Japan in Japanese, and FBC Radio Teos in Russian, all aimed at East Asia.
And speaking of relays, Radio Eli in Estonia on 1,035 kilohertz.
Right. That one's owned by a local group, Tartu Peri Radio, but it primarily relays TWR programs in Russian and Belarusian for listeners in Western Russia and Eastern Europe. It just shows this complex web of partnerships they build to maximize reach.
Fascinating. Now let's pivot to state and public international broadcasters. These are the official voices of nations, often speaking directly to populations far beyond their own borders. Starting with the Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, IRIB World Service, also known as PARS today.
IRIB is Iran's official international network, and they broadcast on a truly extensive number of medium wave frequencies. I mean, the limit is long.
Yeah, I see that. 576, 612, 639, 702. Loads of them.
And their linguistic coverage is equally broad, including Arabic, Kurdish, Azeri, Talish, Turkish, Tajik, Dari, Urdu, Pashto, Turkmen.
Wow.
Targeting regions like the Persian Gulf, southern Iraq, Turkey, the Caucasus, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Central Asia. This network is clearly a powerful tool for projecting Iranian influence and perspectives across a vast geographical and cultural sphere.
And there's the Voice of the Arabs from Egypt on 621 kilohertz. This one has a real historical weight, doesn't it?
It really does. What's particularly insightful here is its history. Voice of the Arabs was, a major medium for Gamal Abdel Nasser's messages on Arab unity back in the 1950s and 60s, a real force in the region back then.
Right.
While it no longer commands that massive audience or the significant political role it once did, it still broadcasts in Arabic. The guide says it's best heard around 0800 to 1200 UTC, from Tanta at 35 kilowatts. It serves as a kind of living echo of that powerful bygone era in pan-Arab broadcasting.
Meanwhile, North Korea also has its Voice of Korea on 621 kilohertz, specifically broadcasting in Japanese for Japan. 500 kilowatts from Chongqing.
That's right, direct targeting.
And the BBC World Service and BBC Arabic TV Audio are still active on medium wave, too.
Yes, from Cyprus on 639 kilohertz and 720 kilohertz, both at 250 kilowatts. They formerly carried mostly the BBC World Service in English.
But that's changed.
It seems so. Now, they predominantly carry the audio feed from BBC Arabic TV, with some English content still mixed in. And as reported late last year on X, they're specifically targeting audiences in Syria, Gaza, and the West Bank.
So adapting the medium wave strategy to current flashpoints.
Exactly. It highlights how even these long-standing international broadcasters adapt. The BBC also broadcasts from Oman on 1413 kilohertz using a powerful 800 kilowatt transmitter, reaching Afghanistan, the Middle East, West Asia, and South Asia with programs in Dari, English, and Pashto.
And India's Akashvani external services also maintain a significant medium wave presence, right, with massive power.
Oh yeah, Akashvani uses very high power transmitters. From Chinsura on 594 kilohertz, that's 1,000 kilowatts, a megawatt, broadcasting Bangla for Bangladesh, with some English and Hindi home service content mixed in.
A megawatt, incredible.
And from Rajkot on 171 kilohertz, also at a staggering 1,000 kilowatts, they transmit Punjabi, Sindhi, Urdu, and Saraiki specifically for listeners in Pakistan. This illustrates a clear strategy of using medium wave for direct, high-power cross-border communication with neighboring nations.
China Radio International, CRI, is another state-owned giant. They seem to be almost everywhere on the dial.
They truly are ubiquitous, yeah. CRI is heard on a multitude of frequencies across the medium wave band, and their linguistic reach is just vast.
Give us some examples.
Sure. Vietnamese, Cantonese, Khmer, English through CGTN radio, Russian, Korean, Thai, Lao, Burmese, Bengali, Nepali, Hindi, Tagalog, Mongolian, Urdu.
Okay, huge list.
It really is. Their target regions span Southeast Asia, South Asia, East Asia, Central Asia, and the Russian Far East. It's a truly global footprint for Chinese state media, showcasing a sustained and broad effort to project influence via medium wave.
South Korea's KBS Global Network is also out there for ethnic Koreans, and Russia's Radio Rossi, too.
KBS Global Network uses two powerful frequencies, 972 kilohertz and 1170 kilohertz, both at 500 kilowatts. They provide services for ethnic Koreans living outside South Korea, as well as KBS World Radio content in Korean, Japanese, Russian, and Chinese, mostly for East Asia.
And Radio Rossi.
Radio Rossi, which is Russia's primary public radio station, is notably relayed from the self-proclaimed Pridnestrovyan Moldavian Republic Transnistria on 999 kilohertz. That's a 1,000 kilowatt transmitter, primarily targeting Eastern Europe. They also conduct occasional tests from Kaliningrad itself on other frequencies.
Now, sadly, the Voice of Tajik on 1143 kilohertz has gone off-air on medium wave.
That's right, unfortunately. This external service, which used to broadcast in a really wide array of languages, Tajik, Persian, Dari, Russian, Uzbek, Hindi, Arabic, English, has been off-air on both medium wave and shortwave since April 2025. It's a significant loss to the medium wave landscape, really, although the guide notes it does remain available online. It's a reminder that even these resilient signals aren't immune to change or perhaps funding cuts.
But then, here's where it gets really interesting politically. Radio Marti from the USA on 1180 kilohertz. It's still going strong, isn't it? Despite some major shifts in other U.S.-funded international broadcasting.
This is a really significant point, yeah. It highlights persistence in the face of pretty big changes. Radio Marti is a U.S. government-financed broadcaster transmitting political propaganda in Spanish to Cuba.
Okay.
It's transmitting from Marathon, Florida at 100 kilowatts, and it continues to broadcast despite some sweeping reductions in other USAGM services. That's the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which oversees various international broadcasters like VOA and RRL, which we really need to talk about next.
Yeah.
Its continued operation really underscores its perceived strategic importance, likely related to Cuba policy.
The Voice of Vietnam, VOV5, is also reaching out to overseas communities, you mentioned.
Yes, VOV5, or VOV World, on 1,200 242 kilohertz from Cantho, that's a 500 kilowatt transmitter. It's Vietnam's national broadcasting service for overseas Vietnamese and also for foreigners. They broadcast in Lao, Thai, Vietnamese, and Cambodian to Southeast Asia. It's a key tool for connecting with the Vietnamese diaspora and reaching neighboring countries.
And even NHK World Japan uses relays through other countries to extend its reach.
That's right. NHK World Japan broadcasts from Tajikistan on 1251 kilohertz, that's 100 kilowatts for Persian and Urdu listeners in West Asia. They also relay from Lithuania on 1386 kilohertz, 75 kilowatts for Russian and English speakers, and from Armenia on 1395 kilohertz, 500 kilowatts for Persian listeners in West Asia, particularly Afghanistan.
So like leasing transmitter time.
Exactly. These relays show how nations strategically use transmitters located in other countries to achieve their desired global reach, hitting specific target regions.
What about Radio Poland and Radio Ukraine International? Are they also broadcasting from Lithuania? It seems like Lithuania on 1386 kilohertz especially has become a bit of a hub.
Both are, yes. Radio Poland leases airtime from that Lithuanian site on 1386 kilohertz to broadcast in Belarusian, Ukrainian, English, Polish, Russian, and German.
What a mix.
And Radio Ukraine International, also using that same 1386 kilohertz transmitter in Lithuania, broadcasts in Ukrainian, Romanian, Slovak, Belarusian, and Bulgarian. It truly highlights Lithuania's vital role as a kind of nexus for these cross-border transmissions, particularly those targeting Eastern Europe and providing alternative news sources to places like Belarus and Russia.
Now, let's get into some of the more unique and definitely politically charged signals. So there's been a big shift recently, hasn't there, with those USAGM reductions you mentioned?
This is a profound shift, yes, and it really shows the real-world political impact right on these airwaves. A key and frankly fascinating development is that President Donald Trump's decision on March 15, 2025, led to the abrupt silencing of many USAGM services on medium wave and shortwave.
Which ones were affected?
Well, major players like VOA Diwa Radio and RRL Radio Mashal, which were broadcast via Tajikistan on 621 kilohertz, also RFRL Radio Azadi and VOA Radio Ashna using 972 kilohertz via Tajikistan, and Radio Azadi again on 1296 kilohertz via Afghanistan and Tajikistan, plus VOA Studio 7, which was aimed at Zimbabwe via Botswana on 909 kilohertz.
So significant services targeting South Asia, Central Asia, Africa just went dark.
Yep.
That's incredible to think how quickly geopolitical decisions can just silence these voices.
That's right. Also impacted were Radio Farda, RSRL Persian service to Iran, which used 1548 kilohertz via Kuwait, and various Voice of America programs that were transmitted via Djibouti on 1431 kilohertz and Thailand on 575 kilohertz.
Wow.
The discontinuance of Radio Saranam, a Thai station that relayed VOA and relays over HLAZ in South Korea for Voice of America and Radio Free Asia, also occurred around that time. It truly shows how geopolitical decisions can directly and sometimes very suddenly alter the global soundscape, proving again that these airways are not just technical channels but active instruments of policy.
Okay, shifting to South Korea now. They have something called Radio 756 AM, reportedly operated by their National Intelligence Service, the NIS, aimed at North Korea, and Radio Free Korea, which even claims to be from a non-existent organization. That sounds quite cloak and dagger.
It does, doesn't it? Radio 756 AM is a 247 service on 756 kilohertz, a constant presence aimed north. Radio Free Korea on 1143 kilohertz is also believed to be operated by the NIS, but it specifically claims to be from a group called Korea Future Solidarity, which apparently doesn't actually exist.
Sure.
This particular detail is a really intriguing cat-and-mouse game for DXers trying to track these signals. It speaks volumes about the hidden, sometimes clandestine nature of some of these cross-border broadcasts.
There's the national radio of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, broadcasting from Algeria on 1550 kilohertz.
Right. Now, while it's not strictly an external service in the same way as, say, the BBC World Service.
Because it's for their own people, sort of.
Exactly. It's operated by the Polisario Front, focusing on independence for Western Sahara. But its reach inherently extends beyond the territory they control, across borders to the Sahrawi community dispersed throughout the region, even with its irregular schedule. It's an important example of a signal that is cross-border by necessity, aiming to unite a specific dispersed community.
Okay, after all these state-run and religious broadcasters, this next one seems, well, very different. Radio Lenta, or Radio Pravda, broadcasting from Lithuania on 557 kilohertz. What makes its approach so unique in this medium wave landscape?
This is truly one of the most unexpected uses of medium wave I've come across recently. It's a project that's actually produced in the Netherlands,
What?
but broadcasting from Lithuania using a 50-kilowatt transmitter. And its specific aim is to counter disinformation and Russian anti-Ukrainian propaganda targeting listeners inside Russia.
Wow, using medium wave for counter-propaganda into Russia.
Precisely. It has a fascinating historical connection, too, having used frequencies previously associated with offshore stations like Big L and later the Dutch station Groot News Radio.
Okay.
It sometimes identifies itself as Nasha Lenta, which means our band or our tape in Russian, and its schedule changes quite often, making it a bit tricky to catch consistently. It really showcases how this older technology is being repurposed for a very modern and arguably vital geopolitical purpose, trying to pierce through state-controlled information bubbles.
That is truly fascinating, using old-school radio waves to fight modern disinformation. Okay, and finally, something maybe a bit lighter for the hobbyists themselves. Scandinavian Weekend Radio from Finland on 1602 kilohertz.
Yes. This is a wonderful example of pure passion for radio-driving broadcasting. Scandinavian Weekend Radio is actually the first private medium-wave shortwave station in Finland.
Really?
Yeah, run entirely by dedicated volunteers, radio amateurs, DXers, people who love radio, even some former pirate radio operators. They have a unique schedule. They broadcast for 24 hours, starting at midnight local time, but only on the first Saturday of most months. The guide notes exceptions for January, May, and September.
So it's an event station almost.
Exactly. The specific upcoming dates listed are July 4th to 5th, August 1st to 2nd, and October 3rd to 4th, 2025. It's a real testament to the enduring appeal of just getting on the air for discovery and connection.
And just to round things off, there's also Colombo International Radio from Sri Lanka and IRIB Medium Wave from Italy mentioned in the guide.
That's right. Colombo International Radio on 873 kilohertz relaunched fairly recently, January 2022, broadcasting in Tamil mainly for South India. And IRS Medium Wave from Italy, using 918 kilohertz and 1323 kilohertz, is operated by the NX-US International Broadcasting Association. It's primarily in English, heard across Central Europe and often further afield depending on conditions. They just add to the sheer variety of voices still active on the medium wave bands.
So what does this all mean then? We've journeyed through this, frankly, surprisingly active world of medium wave broadcasting. It's much more live than I think most people realize.
We truly have. And you're right, it is surprisingly active. From, heavy geopolitical messaging and religious outreach spanning entire continents to niche stations run by passionate hobbyists, and even these bold counter-propaganda efforts we just discussed, medium wave remains this vital, albeit often overlooked, artery of global communication. And the dedicated community of DXers, like Tony Rogers, who compiles this guide, they continue to track these signals, providing this fascinating snapshot of a dynamic landscape that really does defy the digital age in many ways.
My aha moment from this deep dive, I think, has to be the realization that older technologies aren't always just obsolete, are they? They simply adapt. They find new purposes, or they persist where the modern alternatives aren't universally available or accessible or maybe even desired.
Exactly.
It's not about being replaced entirely, but about finding new, often really unexpected niches and ongoing purposes.
Precisely. This medium is far from just a relic gathering dust. It's still actively being used, strategically, passionately, purposefully.
So here's a final provocative thought for you, our listener, as we wrap up. In a world that feels increasingly dominated by curated digital feeds, algorithms showing us what they think we want to see, what deeper, maybe more subtle influences are still being carried on these unseen airwaves, shaping perspectives, connecting communities, perhaps in ways we don't even realize.
That's a good question.
And what other quiet technologies, maybe ones we've written off, might still be shaping our world without us even noticing? Something to think about.